start our second session in this room. These are 18-minute presentations. Our first presenter is Natasha Nurse, lecturer in the nursing department at Lehman College, and the title of her presentation is Virtual Office Hours Using Blackboard Collaborate.
So good morning, everyone. Very glad to be here presenting today. So today I'm going to be talking about how I used Blackboard Collaborate in my online course to do office hours with my students. So just to get an idea of who's in the room, I was going to do this survey poll online, but we're a small group, so we can just do a show of hands. Has anyone ever used Blackboard Collaborate before? Yeah. Oh, awesome. Almost everyone. And for those of you who have used it, what kind of things have you used it for? Yeah?
Online office hours.
Really? Awesome. I can refer to you during my presentation. Anyone else? Yeah?
The fact that I support students, a lot of times if they're preparing for an actual collaborative session, sometimes they get very nervous, so they'll call me and we'll kind of run through the session.
Okay, great.
Or sometimes I'll just use it to show them different things in Blackboard.
Very cool. Sort of a little bit, I'll talk about that too, showing them how to use different things. And anyone else? One more person? Yeah?
Training and office hours.
Training in office hours. Okay, very cool. So I have a lot of people who are familiar with this technology. Yeah, Les.
And I use it for classes during the online course and for remediation.
Great. So sort of lecture presentation, exam paper review, things like that. So there's lots of different things that we can use Blackboard Collaborate for. So I'm going to talk about one way, which is using it for office hours. So first I'll tell you a little bit about how I became interested in using it for office hours. So I did an online class before. I taught an online class once before, and this was my second time teaching an online class. And I wanted to spice it up a little bit. I wanted to make it a little bit better, enhance it. So I started working in a project where I was making my course to meet exemplary status. Are you guys familiar with Blackboard's exemplary online course program? Not really? So Blackboard sets up guidelines so that you can make your class meet exemplary status. There's exemplary, there's good, there's things, less than exemplary, but of course everybody wants to meet exemplary status. So they have certain guidelines. So while I was going through my syllabus and looking at these guidelines, I came across my office hours. And I was changing the date and the time of them because in the nursing department we have to do office hours every week. Is that the same for most other people too? So I thought, if I have online students, they're taking an online class for a reason. Why would I make them come in and do face-to-face office hours? Why not try to do office hours online? And I had just done a workshop from CUNY about Blackboard Collaborate, so I was a little bit familiar with it, so I thought I would experiment this semester. And if you guys haven't taken any of the CUNY workshops, they're really, really great. So I said I would try to do this Blackboard Collaborate session with my students weekly for office hours. So I'm going to show you what Blackboard Collaborate looks like. So this is a picture of a session that I held with my students, and I'll just give you the layout of Blackboard Collaborate. On the top here is a picture of yourself, or if you're using a webcam, it's a live picture of yourself. I put a static picture of myself because I'm a little bit more comfortable with it that way. Right underneath it is the list of participants who are participating in this session. So this was just a sample I brought for this presentation today, but if it was a real session, all the students who are participating in that Blackboard Collaborate session would be listed there. And underneath that, it's like a text chat box. In the middle is the main screen. That's your whiteboard. You can either write in that section, you can type in that section, or you can load PowerPoint slides or any kind of presentation slides. So usually when I have my Blackboard Collaborate session, the first slide that I have up is this before we begin slide, so that students can kind of get ready for the session. I encourage them to come on about 15 minutes early just to run the audio-visual wizard so that it doesn't take time from the actual session. Before this step was another step. I'll send out announcements to the students about the Blackboard Collaborate session. I also created a video tutorial to show the students how to access Blackboard Collaborate session, how to run the they have there's a wizard that they it's not called a wizard, a plugin that they have to download. So I walk them through that step by step, showing them exactly where in the Blackboard environment to find it and how to access it. So now they're here. They're in my Blackboard Collaborate session. What are we doing? So it's designed to be just like office hours. So I remembered using office hours when I was in college, and I really only used it for one class, which was organic chemistry, for obvious reasons. And it was a real savior to me. All the students came, we went over some things that we didn't understand in class, and it was nice communicating with the professor who I had. It was like 100-person lecture hall, but sitting personally with this professor made me feel a little bit more involved in the course, made me feel like this professor was a person. So this was sort of the same idea. Students could drop in, they can ask questions, they can leave when they want, they can stay and listen to other questions, because most of you know, many students have the same questions. So it's good to hear what other people had to say, and they also learn that way as well. Also, what I did was not just the drop-in session. Sometimes I would do a presentation with the students. So for the first Blackboard Collaborate session, for example, I was teaching the students how to use Blackboard Collaborate. So for the first 20 minutes, I just did a very brief presentation of how to use Blackboard Collaborate. So for example, I would show them, if you had a question, you could raise your hand. And then there's a pointer here that shows them exactly where to find the hand, and so everybody would know where it is. And then the next slide would be practice. So then I'd have everybody practice raising their hand, just so they got an idea of how to do it. And then there were more slides like this. Use the audio-visual wizard, find the call-in number, and then a practice slide. So it just kind of gave them a chance to become familiar with it, because none of my students had ever used it before. And then after that, well, for that session, anytime I did a little presentation, I would record it and save it and post it on Blackboard for students who weren't able to come to the office hours. Another session that I did with my students was a brief orientation about the syllabus, because the first day of class we go over the syllabus, and in an online environment it's a little different. I post the syllabus and you tell me if you have any questions, and I found that students had lots of questions that just were not addressed until later in the semester, and it could have made things a little bit easier for them in the beginning of the semester. So one of the sessions I did was an orientation to our syllabus. So for example, there are certain papers that were due for this course. So I went over what the papers were, when they were due, and other questions that students might have. And then the next slide, I'd ask a question. So for example, for this one I asked, how many reflection papers are due for this course? So I'd give them some information, and then I'd ask them a question just to make sure that they retained it and they understood it. And then I showed them how to answer questions using Blackboard Collaborate. There's a small drop down. People can choose the answer that they want, so that I can see that everybody is sort of following along. The last thing that I used it for was explaining about group presentations. Again, another very challenging thing to do in an online course. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood what they were responsible for. So I discussed the presentations, I told them the different types of things that they should include in their presentations, and then left time for questions. I usually don't use Blackboard Collaborate for lecture presentation type things, because I find it's easier just to record it and post it, because attention spans are limited, so students can pause it and rewind and go back to things if they need to. I usually use Blackboard Collaborate for something that's a little bit more interactive, if I need them to respond to me in the middle of a presentation, ask a question, and things like that. So as I said before, I usually do these little 20-minute presentations if need be. If not, it's just a drop in and ask a question, and you can leave when you're done. So how did it go the first semester that I did this? And I only did this one semester so far. I did a midterm evaluation, and I did a final evaluation at the end of the semester. And students really enjoyed having the online office hours. They felt like they knew I was a real person. The idea of presence in online courses is very important. So they really liked that. One student asked me to use my webcam more, because I told you I use my picture. They really want to see a real live face, so I did transition to doing that a little bit more. Other feedback that I got was the time of the office hours. Some students weren't able to make it on the time that I made it available. So about midterm, I started alternating days. I did it on one day one week and a different day the next week and alternated it that way. And I think in my next course, what I'll do is do a survey poll at the beginning of class to see when is the most popular time that students are available. Or take the top 2 popular times and alternate between the 2 of those so I can capture the most students as possible. So it worked out pretty well for me. I'm going to make a few adjustments and try it out again next semester and maybe make another presentation like this next year as another update to this. So if you haven't used it for this purpose before, I would definitely encourage everyone to try to use it.